Hello everybody, welcome to Wild Boy Movies, the place to talk movies, and today we're going to be reviewing My Little Pony, A New Generation, the beginning of the 5th generation of MLP. Right now I'm going to have some information up on screen for you to read, like director, runtime, and PAA rating. All of that will be up on screen for you to read right now. But be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below your thoughts on MLP A New Generation. But without further ado, let's get right into the pros. Alright, starting off, I gotta go ahead and praise the 3D animation in this movie because, yes, instead of 2D animation, which is something that we know from the previous few generations of MLP, this movie went ahead and went full CG animated, and, the animation in here looks pretty good. Like, I'm still gonna say that G4's animation style was better than this movie's animation, but in terms of the 3D animation that this movie presented, it looked pretty good on screen. And since we were talking about Gen 4, I might as well bring up the fact that this movie and this entire generation, in fact, is a continuation from the ending of G4, and I was kind of worried that it might ruin that ending because, in my opinion, the Magic of Friendship series finale is an absolutely perfect ending, like top tier series finale. And thankfully, this movie does not ruin that amazing ending of G4. Like, in my opinion, I would have preferred if this was remained separate from G4 and was just its own standalone thing. But hey, the fact that it did not ruin that perfect ending of G4, I'm perfectly fine with this generation connecting to G4. You also got some pretty good songs in here because they keep in line with the previous few generations where, yes, this generation does include some musical numbers and this movie has about like 5 or 6 of them. And all of them are at least good to be added to my Apple Music playlist. On screen right now is my ranking of all 6 songs that appear in A New Generation, ranked from worst to best. And while I will admit these songs aren't as good as G4 songs, they're still pretty good nonetheless. I also really like the locations that our characters go to in this movie. Like, you got Maritime Bay, which is essentially the Earth Pony City. I thought it was like a pretty cool beachside city. You also get Zephyr Heights, which is essentially the home of the Pegasi. I feel like aesthetically, Zephyr Heights has to be the best looking place that we've seen out of this entire movie and generation, in fact. And you also got Bridlewood, which is essentially the home of the unicorns. All 3 cities and locations were very unique in their own respective rights. These are recurring places that we will visit throughout the entirety of Generation 5. And this movie served a good way for us to get to know these locations that we will be visiting throughout this generation of MLP. This movie also goes ahead and lets us know that even though this is set in the same universe as G4, in this point in the timeline, magic has disappeared, which is a very interesting idea that they went ahead and tackled. The unicorns no longer have their powers through their horns, and Pegasi can no longer fly. That was a very interesting thing that they went ahead and talked upon in this movie, and is essentially the main plot of the film, where Sunny wants to bring back the magic to Pegasi and unicorns, and I thought that story was done very well. But lastly, I gotta go ahead and praise the cast and characters that this movie went ahead and introduced. You got Vanessa Hudgens as Sunny Star Scout, who wants to bring all 3 pony tribes back together and unify the Unity Crystals. And I felt like that the backstory that they gave Sunny in terms of why she wants to reunite all the pony kinds was done very well in that opening scene. you got Kimiko Glenn, who voices Izzy. I thought she did a pretty good job as this character who just randomly stumbled into Maritime Bay and helped Sunny in this adventure. And while I do prefer the Izzy that we do get in Make Your Mark and Tell Your Tale, I thought that the performance that Kimiko did in this movie did a good enough job for me to like the character of Izzy. There's Sophia Carson, who voices Pip Petals, who is this social media influencer / princess of Zephyr Heights. I really like the character of Pip, especially her song Glowing Up, which is my favorite song out of this entire movie. I thought Sophia Carson did a great job in portraying this social media influencer character. And we also gotta talk about Pip's sister, Zip, voiced by Lisa Koshy. I do think that Zip is the best character of Generation 5. That is because of what we see in the later half of the generation. And she did a pretty good job in that role of Princess Zip. And finally, you got Sheriff Hitch, voiced by James Marsden, aka Donut Lord, the best cop that Green Hills has ever gotten. And just like Donut Lord, Sheriff Hitch is also a really great character. I like the way that James Marsden portrayed this character. From wanting to go after Sunny and arrest her to eventually helping Sunny with this mission, and the fact that Sunny and Hitch are also childhood friends. This movie set up some characters that I want to see their stories continue on forward in G5, especially Sunny becoming the Alicorn by the end of the movie. And me personally, I prefer the cast that we gotten in Make Your Mark and Tell Your Tale over the New Generation cast, but I felt like that the New Generation movie cast did a great job with their roles. And just overall, this is just a fun movie to watch. This was a pretty good surprise to me because I was hesitant with G5 and not wanting to watch it, but this movie ultimately surprised me. But there are still some cons with this movie, so let's get into those cons. Starting off, while I really like the idea of magic disappearing from Equestria, I did feel like that they didn't even explain why magic even disappeared in the first place, but I'm gonna let that slide because it's a thing that they do touch upon in Make Your Mark. And is also expanded further in that TV series. But really for me, it is Sprout because I do think that he was not that great of a villain. Now, I will admit, Ken Jeong, who voices Sprout in this movie, did a great job as that role. But for me, in terms of him being a villain, it kind of felt like that he was kind of like a mama's boy. And that he just suddenly stopped being a villain completely out of nowhere. Yeah, Sprout is a good villain, but he isn't a great villain, if that makes sense. But even with those cons, this is still a pretty great movie that I can't believe that I wanted to avoid just because I thought it would ruin the perfect ending of G4. And while I'd wish that this movie got a theatrical release, I still thought this was a pretty great introduction to G5 and this new generation of MLP. So for my scorecard, I'm gonna give My Little Pony A New Generation 4.5 stars, with the score out of 10 being 9.7 out of 10, with the percentage being 97%, with a grade of A+, with my final verdict being an amazing start to G5. But that was my review of MLP A New Generation. I want to hear from you guys. What are your guys' overall thoughts on this movie? Go ahead and leave that down in the comments section. And while you're at it, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And I do plan to make a whole video reviewing the entirety of G5 of MLP sometime in 2025, so stay tuned for that. But until then, have a great day.